I'm Kristen Powell, and I'm 28 years old, a software developer working remotely for a tech startup out of San Francisco. For the past 3 years, I've stayed in my parents' home in suburban Marietta, Atlanta, keeping things low-key to stack my savings and grow my investments. They acted like they were doing me a favor, but underneath it all, their grip on control was tightening, especially when my younger sister came back into the picture after college. That family dinner turned everything upside down. They pounded the table, faces twisted, shouting that I was a loser who needed to get out. The room I'd turned into my workspace was now hers. No discussion. I pushed back, voice steady. But Mom's hand flew across my face, the sting sharp as she shoved me toward the door. "Out!" she hissed, like I was nothing, but I just smiled, that calm washing over me, because they had no idea what was coming. In just 3 days, their jaws would drop at the sight across the street, a mansion claiming its spot, and the so-called loser owning every inch of it. What started as their dismissal became my launchpad, exposing cracks in their perfect facade that they'd never fix. If you've ever faced a betrayal that flipped your world, hang on, you won't believe where this leads. I want to know where you are listening from and what time it is now. I'm very happy that my story can reach far and wide. Let's go back a bit to see how it all built up. 3 years ago, I made the calculated move to live with my parents in Marietta, Atlanta. Not out of necessity, but to maximize my financial edge, as a software developer working remotely for a San Francisco startup. I pulled in a solid six-figure salary, but I funneled 70% of it straight into savings and investments. It wasn't about scraping by, it was strategic. I kept my lifestyle simple, driving an old, reliable sedan and skipping flashy purchases, all while watching my portfolio grow through careful choices in index funds and a mix of tech stocks that had been performing steadily despite market dips. The humid Atlanta summers meant I spent more time indoors anyway, focused on code and charts rather than social scenes. That's where my friend Tamara Reed came in. We met back at Georgia Tech, where I majored in computer science on a partial scholarship. She was a finance whiz who graduated a year ahead and landed a role advising high-net-worth clients. Over coffee meetups in downtown Atlanta, she drilled into me the basics of smart investing, diversification, compound interest, and spotting opportunities in volatile sectors. "Don't just save, Kristen," she'd say, sketching out projections on napkins. "Make your money work harder than you do." I took her advice to heart, setting up automated transfers and monitoring apps that alerted me to shifts. By the time tensions at home started brewing, my nest egg had ballooned beyond what anyone in my family could imagine, including emergency funds that covered a full year's expenses if my job ever went south. I even dabbled in local real estate trends, noting how suburban properties like ours held value in the growing Atlanta market. The real turning point came when I sensed the favoritism ramping up. I'd confided in Tamara about the subtle digs and how my space was becoming a battleground. She pushed me to think ahead. "Have a plan B ready," she advised during one of our calls, her voice firm over the line. "Look into real estate listings quietly. Atlanta's market is hot for quick closes if you go all cash." I started browsing options discreetly, favoring properties in familiar neighborhoods with solid resale value. One listing caught my eye early, a spacious colonial-style mansion right across the street. Vacant after the owners relocated for work, it had everything: updated wiring for my tech setup, a dedicated office overlooking the quiet road, and enough rooms to host without feeling crowded. I ran the numbers with Tamara, confirming my assets could handle it without loans. When the blow-up happened at that dinner, I wasn't blindsided. My smile in the face of their rage, it stemmed from knowing I was steps ahead. The slap stung, the words cut deep, but inside, I was already pivoting. That night, I texted Tamara, "It's go time." She jumped in, connecting me with her realtor contact who specialized in expedited deals. We crunched numbers. My savings covered a full cash offer 10% below asking, waiving inspections to sweeten it for the motivated sellers. The market in Atlanta played in my favor, with low inventory and high demand. The paperwork flew through. 3 days later, the keys were mine. The transfer complete without a hitch. The process felt seamless, from title search to final signatures, all handled remotely while I packed essentials. Looking back, that preparation wasn't just about money, it was reclaiming control. My parents saw me as the reliable one they could push around, but Tamara's guidance turned that into leverage. The mansion wasn't a splurge, it was a statement, positioned perfectly to remind them daily of what they'd dismissed. As I unpacked the first boxes, the weight of those years lifted, replaced by a quiet satisfaction that no ultimatum could touch. The warm Georgia evenings on the new porch sealed it, freedom earned through patience and planning. It all stemmed from how they always played favorites. My family dynamic had been skewed for as long as I could remember, rooted in that classic Southern emphasis on keeping peace at any cost, even if it meant ignoring the obvious imbalances. My father, Randall Powell, ran the household like his logistics job, everything on a strict schedule. His word final, delivered with that drawl that carried authority without needing volume. He believed in tough love, the kind where criticism masqueraded as building character, often saying things like, "Life ain't fair, so toughen up," whenever I brought up issues. But for my sister, it was different. His rules bent like Georgia pines in a storm, allowing her leeway that I never got, like extending curfews for her creative outings while I had to be home sharp. My mother, Lori Powell, worked as an elementary school administrator, a role that left her drained and conflict-averse at home. She'd nod along to Dad's decisions, her passive agreement enabling the favoritism that defined our family. If I achieved something like landing my remote developer gig, she'd give a quick, "That's nice, dear," before shifting to praise for Brandy's latest sketch or half-finished project. It was as if my efforts were expected, while Brandy's were celebrated, no matter how minor or inconsistent. She'd bake special treats for Brandy's inspiration days, but forget my birthdays sometimes, claiming work stress. Brandy Powell, my sister 4 years younger at 24, embodied the free spirit that our parents romanticized. She pursued an art degree that stretched to 6 years, changing focuses from painting to digital media whenever motivation waned, racking up credits slowly amid parties and exploratory phases. The cost a staggering $80,000 in student loans, which our parents covered through Parent Plus loans without a second thought, dipping into their savings and racking up interest they'd never mentioned to me. "She's our creative one," Mom would say, as if that excused the bailouts and the way it strained their budget, forcing them to skip vacations while I contributed rent. The pattern started early. As kids in our Marietta home, Brandy had a habit of dipping into my things, borrowing my headphones for her inspiration sessions, and returning them tangled or broken, or slipping 20s from my wallet for art supplies without asking. When I'd confront her, she'd shrug with that innocent grin, saying, "I thought you'd understand art calls when it calls." If I complained to our parents, Dad would dismiss it as sibling stuff, telling me, "Don't be petty, share with your sister." Mom would chime in, "Brandy needs that spark for her talent, it's not like she's wasting it." Never once did they make her apologize or replace what she took, instead turning it into lessons for me about generosity. This favoritism extended to bigger things. When Brandy flunked classes in high school, they hired tutors and extended deadlines, framing it as supporting her unique learning style. My straight A's got a pat on the back at best, with comments like, "You can handle it on your own." Her car insurance after a fender bender in her late teens, covered without question. even though it hiked their rates. My first used car, I saved for it myself through freelance coding gigs, without a dime from them. The excuses piled up: Brandy's sensitive, or she's got that artistic temperament, while my reliability became the baseline they took for granted. It bred resentment I buried deep, channeling it into my career focus instead. By adulthood, I'd internalized the message. My needs came second, always, reinforcing a cycle where I overachieved to prove my worth, only to see it overlooked. Living back home amplified it, as I built my savings quietly. Their bias showed in small ways: extra groceries for Brandy's organic snacks when she visited during college breaks, or turning the backyard gatherings into showcases for her emerging talent. Complete with guests fawning over her pieces, I stayed silent, accumulating not just money, but a mental tally of every slight, from ignored accomplishments to excused transgressions. It wasn't until she moved back permanently that the cracks widened, pushing me toward the edge I'd been preparing for without realizing, the weight of those years fueling a resolve that simmered beneath the surface. That underlying tension shaped everything. A Southern family facade hiding the rot beneath. Dad's commands, Mom's enabling, Brandy's entitlement, it all converged, making the eventual explosion inevitable. But in those years of quiet observation, I honed my independence, turning their dismissals into fuel for a plan they never saw coming. Each overlooked effort adding to the foundation I'd lay for myself. Things started escalating fast once Brandy moved back. Her return was treated like a homecoming parade in true Southern fashion. My parents spent the weekend deep cleaning the house, polishing the porch furniture, and firing up the backyard grill for a welcome barbecue complete with ribs, coleslaw, and pecan pie, Brandy's favorites. Dad even left work early to pick her up from the airport, something he'd never done for me. As I helped unload her boxes from the car, she surveyed her old room with a sigh. "This space feels so cramped now," she said, stacking canvases against the wall. "How am I supposed to set up my easel properly?" The humid air made the boxes stick to my hands, adding to the frustration as I lugged them inside. Mom rushed to reassure her, smoothing the new bedding they'd bought just for the occasion. "We'll figure it out. Sweetie, the main thing is, you're home." That evening, the dinner table overflowed with dishes, and conversation centered on Brandy's college tales professors who raved about her potential, friends who envied her creativity. My mention of a recent project milestone at work got a polite nod before they circled back to her plans for local galleries. The laughter rang out, but I sensed the underlying shift, the way their attention locked on her every word. The first week set the tone for disruption. Brandy slept until noon most days, tying up the shared bathroom for hours with her morning routines, leaving wet towels and makeup scattered across the counters. Her art supplies migrated from her room to common areas, the porch table covered in paints that dried unevenly in the sun, the backyard littered with sketch pads that curled from moisture. My work calls suffered during a key video meeting with the team. Her music blasted through the thin walls, forcing me to mute and apologize to clients for the interruption. When I asked her to turn it down, she rolled her eyes and flipped her hair. "Relax. It's not like your job requires silence all the time I'm in my flow here." The whispers began soon after, passing by their bedroom one night after wrapping a late code review. I caught fragments: Mom saying Brandy deserved more room to thrive artistically, Dad agreeing it was time to prioritize her setup over my current arrangement. The next day, I found Mom in my office with a tape measure, jotting notes on the dimensions and window placements. "Just thinking about some adjustments," she said vaguely when I questioned it, folding the tape away quickly. Brandy's complaints ramped up too. She griped about the Wi-Fi speed slowing her portfolio uploads during peak hours. demanded better lighting fixtures for accurate color work in her pieces, and even suggested rearranging the living room furniture to improve the energy flow for her inspiration sessions. I kept my cool on the surface, but inside, the tally grew with each intrusion, the constant dismissals wearing thin. Meanwhile, I stepped up my preparations, browsing Atlanta apartment listings during lunch breaks and polishing my resume for potential relocations that offered better work-life balance. A quick call to Tamara confirmed my financial readiness. She reviewed a few property options and reminded me to stay discreet. "Don't let them see you're planning," she said. Her tone practical, as always. "Keep the advantage until it's time to use it." As the days wore on, Brandy's encroachments got bolder. She borrowed my laptop charger without asking. Returning it tangled in paint-smudged cords that I had to untangle carefully when I confronted her in the kitchen. She waved it off casually while sipping sweet tea. "I needed it for editing. Art doesn't wait for permission." Our parents sided with her. As usual, Dad called it sharing resources in a family home. Mom added that creative minds needed flexibility to flourish without constraints. The final straw came when I discovered her using my desk for a quick session, leaving coffee stains on my project notes and displacing my monitors to make space for her palettes. The mess forcing me to reorganize everything. The atmosphere thickened with each passing interaction, their bias fueling her boldness while I plotted in silence. It was clear the home I'd contributed to was no longer mine to claim, the Southern hospitality cracking under the strain. The tension finally snapped at a family dinner. By the third week, Brandy's disruptions had pushed me to my limit. Her paint tubes cluttered the porch, her music drowned out my work calls, and her constant demands for space grated on my patience. One morning, I found my noise-canceling headphones crucial for focusing through her chaos, smeared with acrylic paint on her desk, the ear pads streaked blue. "Just experimenting with sound textures for a project," she said with a careless shrug when I confronted her in the living room, her easel blocking the doorway. I held my tongue, but the irritation burned hotter, a slow boil of frustration. Dad brushed it off when I showed him the damage, leaning back in his recliner. "They're just headphones. Kristen, buy new ones. Don't make a fuss," Mom added softly, stirring a pot in the kitchen. "She's in a creative phase. You know how important that is for her art." I doubled down on my exit strategy, moving faster now. Between coding sprints for a client deadline, I scoured Atlanta rental listings, narrowing down options with quick commutes to coffee shops where I could work undisturbed, their Wi-Fi more reliable than ours. I updated my resume, weaving in recent projects to appeal to startups offering relocation bonuses. My skills sharpened by years of disciplined focus. During a late-night call, Tamara urged me to act decisively. "You're ready," she said, reviewing my savings figures over a shared screen. "Pick a place and move before they corner you with more demands." Her words sharpened my focus, and I started eyeing that colonial mansion across the street. Its for sale sign a quiet promise of freedom in Marietta's familiar grid of lawns and porches. The breaking point came at a backyard dinner, a Southern tradition with string lights twinkling overhead. The table laden with Mom's fried chicken, collards, and cornbread. The air thick with humidity and the scent of grease. Neighbors joined us, praising Brandy's art, her canvases propped up like trophies against the fence, mid-conversation, as I passed the biscuits. She leaned forward, pointing at me with a fork. "My room's too small for my setup," she said, voice casual but pointed, her eyes glinting. "Kristen's office has better light. It's perfect for my work." My fork paused midair, the table quieting. Before I could respond, Dad's voice cut through, low and firm, his drawl heavy with finality. "She's right. Her art needs space to grow. You're set with your job. Kristen, you don't need all that room. I took a slow breath, keeping my tone even despite the heat rising in my chest. My office is calibrated for work moving, it disrupts client deadlines. Can we discuss options that work for us all? Mom shook her head, exasperated, wiping her hands on an apron. Don't make this difficult, Kristen. It's just a room swap for the family's sake. Dad slammed his glass down, ice clinking sharply, his face reddening. You're a loser if you can't see what's best for this family. Get out if you won't give up the room it's for your sister. The neighbors fell silent, eyes darting awkwardly. I started to protest, my voice rising with controlled anger. I've paid rent, contributed for years, doesn't that matter? That's when Mom's hand cracked across my face, the slap echoing in the humid air, sharp enough to make a neighbor gasp. Out! She hissed, pointing to the door, her face flushed with anger, her hand trembling slightly. The sting radiated across my cheek, but a strange calm settled over me, like a switch flipping. I stood, wiped my cheek slowly, and let a small smile curl my lips, my gaze steady on their shocked faces. All right, I said simply, my voice cutting through the silence. I'll go. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom blinked rapidly, and Brandy smirked, thinking she'd won. I walked out into the warm Georgia night, the backyard lights fading behind me, their murmurs trailing off. They thought they'd broken me, but they had no clue what I'd already set in motion. My steps deliberate as I crossed the lawn. The wheels were already turning by the time I walked away. That night, under the glow of my desk lamp, I pulled up my financial dashboard, the numbers confirming what I'd built over years of discipline, my savings, bolstered by steady investments in index funds and tech stocks, sat comfortably above what most in their late 20s could dream of. A quiet testament to my focus. I texted Tamara, my voice steady in the message. It's time to move. She didn't hesitate, calling back within minutes to strategize, her voice crisp with purpose. Her realtor contact, a pro at fast closings in Atlanta's competitive market, had flagged that colonial mansion across the street vacant, listed just days ago, and ripe for a quick deal. Go all cash, 10% below asking, Tamara advised, her tone confident. Waive inspections, and they'll bite in this market. Atlanta's low inventory and high demand meant motivated sellers would jump at a clean offer. By morning, I'd finalized my plan, adrenaline steadying my hands. The mansion's specs 4 bedrooms, updated wiring for my tech setup, an office with a view of Marietta's quiet streets aligned perfectly with my needs, down to the hardwood floors that wouldn't creak under my pacing. I sent the offer through Tamara's contact, my savings covering it without touching the emergency funds I'd set aside for a year's expenses. The sellers, already relocated out of state, countered with a 5% reduction. Eager to close fast, I accepted without pause, and the paperwork moved like lightning. Title searches, electronic signatures, all handled remotely while I sipped coffee in my soon-to-be former room. 3 days after that dinner, I held the keys. The deal sealed without a single visit to a bank. The efficiency a thrill in itself. Packing was methodical, a quiet rebellion against their assumptions. I dismantled my office setup with care, wrapping monitors in foam and coiling cables to avoid damage, each box labeled work or personal for the mover's clarity. I rented a small storage unit as a decoy, sending a few boxes there to throw my parents off, letting them think I was scrambling for a temporary spot. Most of my belongings waited in the garage, stacked neatly, ready for the moving truck I'd booked for dawn. They didn't suspect a thing. Mom asked vaguely about my plans, suggesting a cheap apartment nearby with a patronizing smile, while Dad assumed I'd struggle without their support. His silence heavy with judgment. Brandy, meanwhile, was already rearranging my office, dragging her easel across the hardwood, scratching it without a glance my way, claiming the space she thought she'd won. The morning of the move. The truck pulled up at 7 sharp, its engine humming in the still morning air. I directed the movers with precision, my inventory list ensuring nothing was missed, from my ergonomic chair to the whiteboard I used for project planning. As boxes vanished into the truck, Mom stood on the porch, arms crossed, her expression a mix of confusion and concern. Her apron still dusted with flour from breakfast. Dad watched from the driveway, silent, his usual authority faltering as he adjusted his glasses. When the truck rolled out, I didn't look back, just pointed it 400 feet across the street to the mansion, its fresh-sold sign gleaming in the Georgia sun. The lawn pristine compared to their overgrown one. I stepped out as the movers unloaded, catching my parents' stares from their lawn. Their faces shifted. Mom's eyes widened, her hand clutching her necklace. Dad's jaw slackened, his coffee mug tilting. Brandy froze mid-step with a canvas in hand. Her smirk gone. I walked to the edge of my new driveway, keys jangling in my hand, and said simply, "I've bought it." No explanation, no argument, just the truth, delivered with the same calm I'd felt after the slap. They stood speechless as I turned to oversee the movers, the mansion's front door wide open behind me, sunlight spilling across its polished floors. From that moment, I started a new routine. Every morning, I'd sit on my porch with coffee, laptop open, waving politely as Dad backed out for work, his face grim under the brim of his cap. Mom would glance over, her wave hesitant, her eyes darting to the mansion's facade. Brandy avoided looking altogether, her silhouette darting behind curtains when she thought I wasn't watching. The mansion's shadow stretched across their yard, a daily reminder of what they'd pushed away. Each wave carried a quiet satisfaction, not of spite, but of standing firm where they expected me to crumble. My new home, a fortress of my own making. The view from my porch told a story of unraveling. In the weeks following my move, I settled into the mansion, its spacious rooms a stark contrast to the cramped chaos across the street. Each morning, as I sipped coffee and waved from my porch, I watched their world fray at the edges. Dad's truck started leaving later, his commute disrupted by whispers of layoffs at his logistics firm, a casualty of corporate downsizing sweeping through Atlanta's shipping hubs by the second month. His truck stopped leaving altogether. He'd been let go. A fact I pieced together from a neighbor's offhand comment about severance packages drying up fast. Their house showed signs of neglect, subtle at first but glaring in the Georgia humidity. The backyard, once Dad's pride with its manicured lawn for barbecues, sprouted weeds that tangled around the grill, untamed by his usual weekend mowing. The roof, battered by summer storms, developed a leak that stained the porch ceiling, water pooling in spots Mom used to sweep daily. I overheard a neighbor mention their missed mortgage payments, a rumor confirmed when I noticed bank notices piling up in their mailbox, unopened and yellowing. Brandy's ambitions unraveled faster. Her gallery submissions, hyped during that welcome dinner, were rejected one by one, curators citing lack of originality, a blow she masked with defiance. Instead of regrouping, she leaned harder into distractions. Late-night gatherings with friends became a regular spectacle, their laughter and clinking bottles spilling into the quiet suburban street. Twice, I saw police cruisers pull up after noise complaints, their red lights flashing across my windows as neighbors whispered about that Powell girl causing trouble. Her art supplies, once strewn proudly, sat untouched, gathering dust on their porch. The financial strain was impossible to hide. During a grocery run, I spotted Mom using coupons for the first time, her cart filled with generics instead of Brandy's preferred organic brands. Dad's health took a hit too. Our neighbor, Mrs. Carter, mentioned his blood pressure spiking. His doctor visits skipped because of unpaid bills. Their cars stayed parked longer, the tires looking softer each week, a sign of maintenance they couldn't afford. Brandy's spending didn't stop, though packages of new brushes and paints arrived. Paid for with credit cards I knew were already maxed out from covering her $80,000 student loans. One humid afternoon, 3 months after my move, Mom appeared at my door, her face drawn, hair streaked with gray she hadn't bothered to dye. She clutched a worn purse, her eyes avoiding the mansion's polished interior. "Everything's falling apart," she said, voice breaking as she stood in my foyer. "Your dad's job is gone, the house payments are behind, and Brandy, she won't look for work. Says it stifles her creativity. We're drowning. Kristen, can you help?" Just this once, her hands trembled. A plea wrapped in desperation. I leaned against the doorframe, my expression calm but unyielding. "You made choices," I said, my voice steady. "You chose her over me, again and again. I built this myself, you don't get to claim it now." Her eyes welled up, but I didn't waver, the memory of that slap still sharp. She nodded, almost crumpling, and left without another word. Her footsteps heavy on my driveway. From my office window, I watched their decline deepen, each day a confirmation of their misplaced priorities. The bank notices turned into a foreclosure warning taped to their door, its red ink stark against the peeling paint. Brandy's parties grew louder, her friends' cars clogging the street. But no galleries called. My morning waves continued, a quiet ritual that underscored their unraveling against my stability. A contrast as clear as the Georgia sun cutting through the morning haze. Their collapse was complete, and I chose to walk away for good. 5 months after I settled into my mansion, the cracks across the street became chasms. The foreclosure notice on my parents' door turned into reality. A sheriff's sale sign went up. The house auctioned off at a loss to cover their mounting debts. Dad's layoff had left them with no income to bridge the gap. Their savings drained by Brandy's $80,000 student loans and their maxed-out credit cards. They moved into a small rental condo on the edge of Marietta, a downgrade from the sprawling southern home they'd once prided themselves on. Neighbors whispered about their fall, their voices carrying across the street during evening walks, tales of missed payments and a family unraveling under the weight of their choices. Brandy's path was even bleaker. Her gallery rejections piled up, each one chipping away at her bravado until she stopped submitting altogether. The late-night parties with friends, once a defiant escape, fizzled out when her social circle dwindled, evicted from her shared apartment for unpaid rent. She bounced between couches, lugging her canvases in trash bags. A neighbor mentioned seeing her at a gas station, selling sketches for cash to cover bus fare. Her artistic vision reduced to survival. She'd burned bridges with local galleries, her reputation tarnished by demands for special treatment and a portfolio that never evolved. I watched it all from my office window, the view unobstructed as their house stood empty, its windows dark. Dad's health worsened, high blood pressure led to a hospital scare, unpaid medical bills stacking up alongside their debts. Mom tried calling once, leaving a voicemail that trembled with exhaustion. "Kristen, we need to talk, things are bad," she said, her voice cracking. I didn't call back. The memory of her hand across my face, their years of favoring Brandy over me, anchored my resolve. When Dad showed up unannounced one evening, standing on my porch with slumped shoulders, he tried to appeal to family ties. "We're struggling," he said, his drawl softer than I'd ever heard. "You've got all this. Can't you spare something?" I stood in the doorway, my posture steady, the mansion's polished interior gleaming behind me. "You chose this," I said, my tone even but firm. "You picked her needs over mine. Every time, I built this life without you, now you face the consequences. His eyes dropped. No argument left. And he walked away. His steps heavy on the gravel. That was the last I saw of them. I changed my number, blocked their emails, and let the distance grow. A clean break from the family that had dismissed me. In my new home, I thrived. The mansion became more than a house. It was a symbol of what self-respect could build. I furnished it deliberately, each piece chosen for function and comfort. From the sleek desk in my office to the cozy chairs on the porch where I worked on warm evenings. My career flourished without interruptions, landing a promotion that came with a hefty raise, my focus sharper now that I wasn't carrying their burdens. I even started mentoring young developers, sharing the discipline that had carried me through, finding purpose in helping others avoid the traps of misplaced loyalty. The lesson was clear. Self-worth isn't negotiable. In America, where family can feel like everything, enabling one person's entitlement at the expense of another can break more than relationships, it can shatter lives. Their choice to prioritize Brandy led to foreclosure, health crises, and a daughter left to scrape by. While I learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. Standing firm meant losing a family but gaining a life I owned outright. One where no one could demand what I'd earned.